An effort that began yesterday by the U.S. military to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz was short-lived. Moments ago, Donald Trump announced he is pausing Project Freedom. In a post to Truth Social, the president has said that he made the decision at the request of Pakistan. He also said that the progress has been made in peace negotiations with Iran and that he would like to wait a short time to see if a final agreement can be reached. In the past 24 hours, both the United States and Iran had accused one another of firing on commercial ships as they fought for control over the strait. Journalist Nick Harper is following this story for us from Washington. Nick, can you walk us through this latest development? This is really just happening.
That's right, Sarah. Breaking news this evening, which means things change once again. That very short-lived endeavour from the United States, trying to escort ships safely through the Strait of Hormuz. Project Freedom was its name, but it's now on pause. Donald Trump posting on social media within the last few minutes, saying that really it comes down to the realisation that there has been great progress between the US and Iran on the possibility of getting to a complete and final agreement. So they have mutually agreed on this. Obviously, this word coming from the US president, no word yet from Iran about whether or not this was by mutual agreement, but it will be paused, he said, for a short period of time to see whether or not a finalised deal can come to realisation. But he did say that the US naval blockade against Iranian ports will remain in place. And earlier in the day, we heard from the US Secretary of State about how that blockade, the prevention of Iranian ships from leaving or entering their country, how that's affecting the Iranian economy. Marco Rubio said it was crippling Iran. He said that trade had been halted by 90%, and he said that they were losing $500 million a day in lost revenue. Donald Trump, though, was asked about this ceasefire, the idea that it's remaining in place despite the strikes and counter-strikes over the last few days. And he was asked by a reporter in the Oval Office earlier what it would take for Iran to do to violate that ceasefire. This is what he had to say.
Well, you'll find out, because I'll let you know. They know what to do, and they know what to do. They know what not to do, more importantly, actually. And, they fired them in little boats with pea shooters, the pea shooters, little boat with little, why? Because they don't have any boats anymore. Their Navy is comprised of, they call them little boats, right? Boats or little boats. And they're fast, yeah. They're so fast that they had 8 of them and they're all gone. And they're fast, but they're not fast like a missile. A missile is slightly faster.
So we have seen those strikes, and perhaps part of the decision to pause Project Freedom was a warning from Iran earlier that any ship bypassing the Strait of Hormuz without permission from Iran would face decisive action from the Iranian Navy. Sarah?
Nick, I think that anyone paying attention to the developments, and they are fast moving, but when we hear about, shots fired here, what does all of this mean for the current ceasefire?
Well, that's it. I mean, if there are shots fired, you would think that the ceasefire is over. But the US Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, was adamant earlier in his press briefing. He said that the ceasefire is not over. That's despite detailing attacks, he said, by Iran against US forces on 10 occasions during this ceasefire. But he said that those attacks were below the threshold to restart combat operations. And he said essentially the decision on whether or not to restart hostilities came down to the president.
Ultimately, the president's going to make a decision whether anything were to escalate into a violation of a ceasefire. But certainly we would urge Iran to be prudent in the actions that they take to keep that underneath this threshold.
So fast-moving developments this evening, perhaps some movement in the direction of a deal. We'll have to wait and see whether there is a possibility of both sides getting back to direct talks, back to the negotiating table, perhaps ending this conflict once and for all. Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Nick. That's journalist Nick Harper in Washington.